Niall, congratulations. It's a big job. It's a challenging job. What is the job? Explain what your responsibilities will be.
Well, I suppose I've been brought in to assist both the board, the newly composed board, and the new interim CEO, Gary Owens, in bringing some assistance on the footballing side. And what that leads to are various pillars of the game, from the grassroots, to community development, where football can help in the community, right the way through, to our elite programs, our player pathways, and assisting League of Ireland clubs. Rebuilding, if you like, relationships with peers, such as UEFA, etc. Potentially, being part of a team that has emerged from the dark shadows of the last year and starts to rebuild trust and confidence to the outside world, particularly when it comes to the world of sponsors, etc., that we get it right within our own domain, that we have a thriving organisation inside our walls where people are encouraged to be great at what they do, where the culture of fear has disappeared and the culture of growth replaces it, and want to see people in the FAI jumping out of bed to go into work every day because their careers are flying. They're getting great, I suppose, enjoyment out of what they do, and they're delivering great things using their ideas, letting people actually be good at what they're in there to do, as opposed to restricting them and having a culture of fear. So if we get that culture right inside in the FAI, then we can spread it outside. And I'm really looking forward to working with the people in football who work for the association in really driving the impact that they can make. And if we can do that, then we're fit to go outside and say football is good and healthy. We can talk the talk, but we've got to actually encourage, I suppose, the people who come in, day out and work with the FAI to leave that negative place behind them and go and deliver great projects, use their ability to drive the power of football home to the community of Ireland. That's first and foremost. Everything else will work around that.
Just the nuts and bolts of it then. It's an interim position. Do you envisage it lasting longer than an interim period? And also in terms of pay, given what went on in the past, people will want to know what's going on in that regard.
Sure, okay. So it is interim and it is for a short period of time, we believe. But in that period of time, it's very important that a strategy is developed in those pillars that everybody is feeding into and everybody feels it's the correct thing, so that whoever comes afterwards and whenever they come, that they're not starting all over again, that there's a structure and a strategy in place that joins up all pillars of the game, all aiming the right way and all signed off by the board, if you like, in terms of the future of where football goes. If in 6 months' time or whenever the interim comes to an end, and the situation is assessed and whether we stay or not, that's immaterial at this point. And Gary and I are both in agreement that what has to happen in the meantime is that on his half of the house, which is governance and administration, on my side of the house, which is the football side, that we're in a much better place with a strategy going forward that can last, that can be tapped into and be understood and be welcomed by all the stakeholders. And that's what the next few months is about, and we'll just take it one step at a time. But the biggest thing I can say going in there is our biggest job is to listen. It really is, because, people haven't been allowed to express themselves in that association. Good quality people who have been oppressed, if you like, in the last number of years. And so the productivity wasn't what it should be. We believe, whether it's the League of Ireland clubs, whether it's the players and their representatives, whether it's the Schoolboy Association, all the different services, whether it's the ladies, in whatever form, they'll need a unified voice to come at us to look for more. The schoolboys will, the grassroots will, amateur football will. And it's very important that we sit and listen and take our time to understand each. But it's also very important that they unify as one and they come collectively, as opposed to, sort of different parts of each house looking for its own thing. You see clubs fighting at the moment as we speak. It's very important that they carry on the work they've done for the last 8 months in unifying themselves and get to a position where they come to us as a united voice, and that we give them every help we can. And that stands for every part of the game. I think what an opportunity we have for ladies football as well. I think that's starting to really thrive. And despite the shenanigans in the past, it would be a a big part of Gary and I's remit to make sure that ladies football not only is left in a better place when we go, but that there's a structure in place that ladies football can grow to something quite exceptional. And the other pillars of the game too. That's what we're charged with. It sounds a lot, but you know what? When you get in and alter a culture, and when people start to thrive, they'll actually do the work. And I think leadership, the best leadership sometimes comes from people who listen and who don't bark out orders. And I think that's the motto, if you like, of what we're trying to achieve here, is to listen and to help grow.
The last time we spoke about the changes that were taking place, you said you still had massive reservations. You said the old FAI was still involved, that you didn't want to get involved yourself in it. What's changed?
Obviously, Roy Barrett becoming independent chairman was huge because of his skill set, vast experience he had, and his desire to do this for the love of the game. That's a big part of this, and that he was able to bring the stakeholders together who could save us, because after all, we really are, dependent on the assistance from the government, from the banks, and from UEFA. So Roy coming in and almost easing that into play and bringing confidence to all parties, that was a big part of wanting to get involved afterwards. And the announcement, and I met Catherine and Liz, who've come on the board as well as independent directors, and they are just absolutely fantastic people with wonderful backgrounds and skill sets to bring things even further. And I think what you add to that in the last couple of weeks as well was the fact that, as Roy Barrett and the team with him were bringing things, to a better place with those very important stakeholders, that one of the things came out of it, that more reform would be needed if they were to go as far as Roy was trying to get them to move to. So not sure what that extra reform is, but it does mean it's going the right way. There's great people in there now in the independents, and so the board members that come can thrive. I mean, they're people who found themselves in this position on the board at a very difficult time, but now I think they are all on the one pathway for change. There's one or two things in behind the scenes there on committees where people are worried about old FAI people, if you like, coming through.
You want to sideline the old FAI, the committee men, the people, in the council, and that old way of doing things?
I think it becomes less relevant now that the skill sets that are up there at the top of the independent board and the power that the independents will have is more important than what's occurring maybe at a national level away from the sort of top table. So I took the view, and Gary did too, that we're on a path of reform. It's just going to get better and better. The implementation of the governance review group will be there, but there is to be more. I mean, I was very vociferous that it didn't go far enough, but I believe it will do very shortly, and that will be enough for us to start forgetting about the past really and moving on, and regardless of who's coming up through committees, they'll be in a system that there'll be no going back to the old way.
Before we get to big picture stuff, the immediate crisis is still being addressed, and I know that efforts are underway and well underway at this stage in terms of the debt, refinancing the debt. Can you say anything about the immediate concern about keeping the lights on, keeping the association solvent? Well,
it's not my part of the house, but what I have sort of done now is I've stepped over the line because I believe it will be good and it'll be good enough. That's not that I know any of the figures involved. I don't know where it will end up when it finally is announced. I hope it's announced very, very soon, but I'm led to believe that there is an assistance in place from the three stakeholders, the banks, UEFA and the government, that will allow the game to move forward. If that's the case, great, I can't wait to get at it. If we're all let down in a week's time and that doesn't materialise, then we might have to think again. But right now the feeling is that there's going to be room to manoeuvre, and that Roy and Liz, Catherine, Martin Herity, those who were directly involved, and the other board members have secured a better future for football. But we'll wait and see that. I mean, it's something that I think we're all eager to hear. But I back that group to deliver, and that's why I'm in.
Can you give any message, whether through yourself or Gary, to the staff? And the talk of job losses since this process, since the financial figures became apparent, fearing for their jobs over Christmas, still not sure about the situation. Is there any message yet to them over the next few months of what the picture might be?
Well, first and foremost, that will be Gary's side of the house to restructure and to re-strategize the administrative side of the game. So he will get to the bottom of that when the full extent of the assistance is known. and where things can go. And it's a difficult time for staff, I know, but I'll be hopefully meeting up with everybody on Monday and trying to instill a bit more confidence in the system that that it's not as bleak as some of the pictures that were painted, and that there is a growth pattern there envisaged for us to all be part of. Right now, it's still in that stage of not sure where we're going, but I would ask that they understand that a lot has been done to ease the pain of the catastrophe of the last sort of organisation who ran this. So a bit of time will reveal all, but the hope would be, and I know how Roy operates, and how Gary would operate, that job losses would be an absolute minimum, but we'll have to just wait and see.
Can I quote you from the last time we spoke about things, which was in December, and you were summing up the situation after an incredible year that was. The integrity of the game is in tatters, the public are angry, the commercial sector are running, and the volunteers are shattered. That were your words last month. How do you fix that, and do you believe there is untapped potential that hasn't been reached in terms of commercially, with the state bodies, etc., and just the general vacuum of morale that's there now?
Yeah, I do. I believe we can get into a better place, because I would have also said at that time, but we mustn't waste this crisis, that it does give you opportunity. And thankfully that opportunity has arisen for both myself and the other members of the group that were coming together wanting to do their bit for football. And that's very much the way we see things, that if we get it right within the association, if we get people bursting at the seams with their talent in all parts of the association, then we can go outside and we can attract sponsorship. People can trust us. Our credibility will be good again. But if we can't do that within our own walls, we're at nothing. So the staff become very, very important in this, and it's just a bit of leadership that probably hasn't been there before to help us to get into a place where we can deliver with great faith and great confidence that people who will come back in to support the association, the commercial sponsors that aren't there now, that are leaving, that they will, come into a much better organisation, and they'll get better bang for their buck. That's part of the process. That's the opportunity, and again, I'll go back. As long as we listen, as long as we start to reshape and reconfigure how people come in and work and do their jobs, and do it so that they can get it, done to the maximum of their abilities, that they feel great about being part of the association, then we can go outside and say, be part of this great thing that's happening.
Three Mobile are gone, we know that, in the summer. Is it part of your remit to, as you said, I know there's create the environment, but to get somebody else in the door?
You'd like to do that, and what way do you assume things? Businesses always make assumptions, and the assumptions are, will we get somebody in? Will we not? Will we go a year without a sponsor? It's very, very hard to know, but at the same time, I think there's a great will for the game to succeed in this country and for things to get better. And that's not just the fan on the street who wants to see the Irish team do well at senior level. It's people who want to see the ladies team go well. They maybe want to see there could be a lady sponsor, for instance. We don't have a lady sponsor, and other associations, the big ones have individual sponsors for ladies. Can we break that up and give them, a huge boost and lift? These are the type of things that we would look at. But as time moves on, and as we do our listening, we also must assist, and we also must bring things into play. And relationships become very important with I suppose, outside peers that can affect even greater change and I suppose a greater improvement in everything. And that's where I think it's vital that government are happy with this. If government are happy and they feel good about taxpayers' money and where it's going, that's a great message to send out to to commercial entities who may also see the benefit of being part of something that is really getting itself into shape to be better than it ever was, and something that generally will make people feel great again about football. It's a big ask when you add it all up like that, but when you go back and say, okay, we're going to start this in with the association, in-house, we're going to make this a great association, and by definition, it will grow outside. UEFA are there to help us. We know that already. That's a big help. FIFA are there to help us. We don't have any enemies here because of the past. Everybody wants us to do well. And in Ireland particularly, one of the most enjoyable things of the last few weeks was the I suppose people get in touch, the quality of people getting in touch to offer assistance. We were just talking about it there recently, Gary and I, the texts we're getting from leaders in industry, can we help? Is there anything we can do? I think that augurs really well. Now, what we have to do is prove that people like that can come in and help, and UEFA can, and FIFA can. We've got to put the right sort of leadership in place, and we got to show a trust and credibility that's evaporated. But that's the opportunity, and that's the exciting thing. I'm always accused of being over optimistic. I'm very hopeful that the assistance that we get from the stakeholders who can make the difference in the first instance give us the chance to do that. But after that, we really want to get rolling at it, and we would encourage, as I say, as many stakeholders to feel good about being part of this association, whatever level you're at, whether it's a grassroots team down the country, whether it's an elite program that's happening, whether it's the ladies pushing for better, bigger and better growth, space for them, and all of the stakeholders feeling as one. We've got to get to that, but we'll start inside in Abbottstown, and if we get it right in Abbottstown, we can bring that out elsewhere.
Let's talk about the League of Ireland then, which John Delaney infamously described as the difficult child at one stage. How do you view it? It's
our greatest potential. It has an ability, I believe, to make football thrive in this country for lots of reasons. It's our elite place for our football pathways to be at. If people go to England on the way, or as a result of being in that's fine. That they'll have got to senior level, please God. Or they'll have come through academy systems and they will have been trained correctly in the long run. In terms of I suppose, giving it the opportunity it needs to expand. If you look all around Europe, I just saw an article the other day, for instance, Switzerland announced a new 31 million a year TV deal for games in Switzerland. You look at the populations, you look, okay, there's no hurling there, there's no Gaelic football, but at the same time, when you compare that to the zero that clubs currently get for showing their live matches, there is great potential there for us to make the League of Ireland into a more presentable, I suppose, attractive proposition for TV. And in those summer months, when there's no football anywhere else in Europe, and we're, playing our football on Friday nights and Mondays, I think that can be expanded and people can have a look in from outside, and we can grow. I mean, there's a funny thing to look at, and that would be, if you compare where the League of Ireland are and how they've been treated and what they do, they've actually got to pay a lot of money to play in the league, and the association take that money and give some of it back in prize money. But to me, the association should be helping the league clubs in whatever form. If that means they're going their own way and we're a little bit there, or if that means we're a hybrid model where we're kind of half and half them, or if they stay with FAI controlling things, it still has to be viewed as something that needs great attention and care to drive, because if that's better, everything that's underneath will become better purely by definition. And so money is tight right now, but I think if we can prove the value in the League of Ireland, if they can unify and come collectively to the table with their demands from the association, then I think the association is there. Part of its reason for being there is to assist the league and to assist those clubs, both individually to get the best commercial deals that they can, but collectively to get TV deals and to get overall sponsorship deals that will, I hope in time, dwarf what's happened up to now. I mean, that has to be the aim. And if we can get a successful league, I think the league has a lot to be proud of right now. But if we can get a league that's successful and measured by TV audiences, by commercial addition to that, then I think, it's up to the clubs to make best use of that money, and the players need to be treated better as well. There's a whole upgrade needed, and government have spoken about being kind to the League of Ireland in the future, and that it will be assisted. So we'll push as time goes on. That's why relationships with government are very important. They're a very serious stakeholder here, and I've said it many times. There's lots of money being placed on bets in football. And it's not going to football right now. It's going to horse racing and greyhound racing. But I think there may come a day if we prove ourselves, and if that stake that they get went up a little bit, that we could take some of that pot. And I would have thought government will have to feel confident for that, but we'll try and do that.
I'm going to come back to that. Just finally on the League of Ireland, do you envisage a scenario, or would the ideal scenario be where the League of Ireland runs itself, a la the Premier League, under the auspices of the association, goes out, gets its own deals. It's essentially privatized, if you like.
Well, we've got to listen to see what they feel is best for them. And they've got to come together, which they have done. The great thing about the last 8 months as far as League of Ireland, if there is a great thing that has happened, is that they have now got a voice. They're starting to unify and constitute themselves to actually work out for themselves what they want. And coming at us as a singular voice, a strong singular voice that want to do research, that want to provide their best pathways and want assistance from us to do that, we must do that. We must, as an association, treat the League of Ireland with far more respect than it ever has, and we must give them every best practice opportunity that we possibly can. And if that means assisting them in their player pathway developments, in their, in the National League, for instance, that's come into being, that's a huge cost for the clubs. So we've got to look, can the association help the clubs with that? Where can we be seen? And this is all assuming, the assistance we get allows us to start thinking this way. But how can we treat the league better and find ways that will make life easier for them to grow? But I'd go to the big two. The big two are an overall title sponsor, in time, and Electricity do it now. And where can that go? And TV rights where games can be watched in South Boston. Games can be watched in New York.
Will you be pushing or certainly supporting the All Ireland League plans?
If that's what the clubs want. I don't think we should be driving that agenda as an association. I think the association should be listening, working out how best we can support the needs of the clubs. And so if they come with that agenda, then we must give them every support on it. If they come with a hybrid agenda in terms of them doing their own thing but needing strong assistance from the association, then we must support them. If they come and say we're out of here, but we want to hang on to our UEFA Cup place, we must support them in that as well. I don't think there'll be any, let there be no doubt that if the clubs are strong enough in how they unite and how they come forward, we're here to help them.
A couple of final ones then. You touched on it there. You've said in the past horse racing gets 67 million from the Exchequer, football gets 3 million. Are you going to push the government in time for a bit more in terms of government investment in the game?
We have to deserve it first, because in fairness to horse racing, their return for the Exchequer is there for everybody to see. Best horses in the world, best trainers in the world, best jockeys in the world, and a thriving rural industry. So, they can stand up and say we deserve it. The bit that is open to question is where the bets are going. So, having looked at how many people are betting in football, particularly on English football, as it turns out, and Premier League football and European football, which we cover, it does leave itself, to say, okay, well, there's money coming in from football into this pot, because the horse racing betting that's going on is happening in Kempton and Wolverhampton. It's a similar profile of where the money is coming from. So we have a long way to go on that, because right now the Exchequer will say, prove yourself. And, I think we've got to start doing that, but let them know that we are doing it, and keep a little knock on the door every so often to say, remember us, with a lot of money being bet on football, we've got these good things in place, and assuming that's what we can do, the community development stuff, the player pathway, the League of Ireland, all of this, I think, deserves a little bit more than 2.9 million a year.
What's happened in the past is still raw in the memory. People will look at your group and say, here's Niall and Roy Barrett and Gary Owens, who were involved in this visionary group who came forward last year, and now they've kind of taken over here. We've just got rid of one gang. This is another gang in. Can you give assurances? That's very harsh,
Tommy. That's very harsh.
Give assurances to people who don't want to see the association taken over or subject to the way it was run before, which was in the in very narrow interests, particularly one powerful person within the association.
Sure. Well, if people are thinking we're comparable to that gang, then we're at nothing. Okay. So first and foremost, this group got together with the intent, which was stated publicly, to help better the game, and everybody stated that they were not in this for self-interest. May I tell you already, Roy, who does what he does, and has done an amazing job in the few weeks that he's in the role. He is paid zero. It is a labour of love from a football-loving man of high-quality skill sets who just wants to see the right thing done. To Gary Owens, who's the interim CEO, who has achieved so much in the world of business. A salary here is unimportant. And myself as well, who got so much out of football. and stated very clearly when I was approached by the new board a couple of weeks ago that I did not want a salary. Gary and I got put back in our box a little bit to say, well, you have to be held accountable. So for a fraction of what the old gang, and I mean a fraction of what the old gang were at, it's there. But I've deferred mine. Let's see how the redundancies work out, and let's see where the association gets to before I take mine. But that's I mean, only just part of it. I mean, the belief of what you're calling the new gang. The belief is that football can thrive and that the old way, has to be completely changed, and it's coming from people who are doing this for their love of the game. And they didn't get what I got out of football. And what I got out of wearing a green shirt, I just can't add up in financially. So I have other things in my life that I have. To carry on with. I'm contracted here with you, of course, so I can't get out of that. So you'll keep grilling me. But I do think it's an opportunity. We're all of the same ilk that this has to be done better. And with the skill sets, more so than me, I was the football man, but the skill sets that we had around in that group, I think it's so encouraging that, two people like Roy and Gary are there at the helm. I hope people will feel confident and safe about that. And the proof will be in the pudding. You'll see shortly how their style versus the old gang, as you call it, how that'll go. And I'm confident that people will be okay.
Let's hope so. We'll wrap it because I know you have a lot of work to be getting on with. It's been an incredible journey from Manortown United to World Cups, running Premier League club. Is this the biggest challenge yet?
Yeah, I'm still playing with Straffan over 35s, just to let you know. They're not picking me lately, but yeah. Is it a big challenge? It's the Sunderland was a scary thing to go into when I went to Sunderland. It was a world I knew, but I knew the football side of it. I had to learn a lot fast. We were lucky here, actually, Tommy, about 13 months ago. We were allowed to change the narrative from the European nights only that we cover, where we could bring Irish football and the domestic scene into the narrative. And both yourself, Brian, myself, Kevin Kilban, Graham didn't really know what we were on about a lot of the time, but we were allowed to explore the narrative. And in exploring the narrative, I felt I had to look at it a bit deeper because I'd been in England, involved with English football so long. And I didn't like what I saw. And Brian Kerr, of course, didn't like what he saw. Lots of us didn't like what we saw. And we started shaking a few trees in here. Thankfully, other people drove it further. The guys in the Sunday Times, investigated the whole thing brilliantly. And so as things started to unravel in the FAI, for all the talk we were doing, it was time to do the walk. So talking the talk was one thing. We just felt, okay, what can we do? That's where the group came together. And that's why, after the Marion Finucane programme, when the likes of Gary got in touch and when Roy said, okay, let's do something about this, or are we just going to keep talking? That's when it got really interesting. Other people came into the group with skill sets. And it was like confidence in numbers of people with a different skill set and a different reason for wanting football to kick on, and that stays strong, that stays solid. And anybody who was part of that group, whatever they end up doing in the future, if it's anything to do with this association, that's where it stems from, and that's at the heart of this. So I can only just say that it's a pleasure to be doing it. It's not the hardest challenge ever. I think it can only go one way. And again, I'm assuming that the banks, government and UEFA are giving us a chance to do it. But I can't wait to see the people in the association thrive in their jobs, which will expand itself outside the walls of Abbottstown into communities and into our young people's lives and volunteers, etc. Look, there's an awful lot of problems in Ireland at the moment. We have a chance of putting football in a really good place. Like, that makes me jump out of bed, and I hope others who are involved with the FAI will jump out of bed quicker than me, and let's get this thing done.
Now, I wish you all the best with it.
Thanks, Tommy.
Thanks.
Cheers.